Welcome once again, colleagues. It's good to see all of you here. This is the clinic session that will be dealing with the live demo of the electronic application process. My name is Biniam Sisai. I'm from Ethiopia, and I will be the support facilitator of this session. Before I give the opportunity to Laurie to speak, I would like to say that this session is going to be recorded, so please be informed about it, and it's going to be made available for other colleagues so that they will be able to see. Those who are not here will be able to listen and see. And it's a short information session, so if you have, we won't have much time for a Q&A, but if you have questions and comments, please put them in the chat room. At the bottom of the screen, you have a chat application. Please put your comments and questions in the chat box and in the chat room, and we'll see, depending on time, we'll make, Laurie will be able to respond to some of those questions. So we'll go directly to Laurie Roman now. She will have the presentations. As I mentioned earlier, Laurie Roman is a customer service manager for eSubmission at NIH. Laurie, the screen is yours.
Okay, so welcome. I'm very excited to be presenting to you today. I'm going to be demonstrating, doing a live demo in one of our lower environments of ASSIST, which is NIH's system that allows for the preparation and submission of applications. Before starting that demo, I just want to go through a few slides, giving you a couple of good resources that will really, I hope, help you with the application process. So the first is available at https:/grants.gov.nih. The URL is at the bottom of the screen, and the How to Apply Application Guide. This is actually where you will find the instructions on how to prepare your application. And you can see that there is a G general instructions. This is a pretty hefty tome of instructions for all of the different kinds of grant programs supported by NIH. I know many of you are thinking about applying to some of the opportunities that will involve multi-project applications. And I've starred that with an arrow. So these, again, instructions have been filtered to give you the digested view of how to prepare a multi-project application. And that will also be the focus of the live demo. Additional resources such as due dates, submission policies, and a little bit of an overview on the whole submission and review process are seen over in the resource panel on the right-hand side of the screen. In addition to these slides, I've also prepared a walkthrough of how to prepare complex applications as a slide set, which I will make available to the program folks so that they can be distributed to you if you'd so like. So again, a lot of the information that I'm going to digest into a few slides can be found by clicking on the links to how to prepare to apply, such as system roles, registration, things of that nature. So again, I'm just going to be presenting some highlights. A lot of the details that we'll be covering in this presentation can be found in far greater detail by following these links. I do want to highlight the importance of registering early. This process can take up to 6 weeks. So currently you are required to get a DUNS number. This is a unique number provided by Duns and Bradstreet. It's free. It will be replaced with a unique entity identifier, UEI, sometime in 2021. The rollout process for that was delayed by the COVID pandemic. You will need also to be registered at the time of submission for system award management also known as SAM. This is needed to do business with the federal government of the United States. This is the only registration that you need to touch upon annually. And these registrations are for your organization, not for an individual. The only individual registration that you will need is a ERA Commons ID. You can get that from your organization once they are registered at ERA Commons. You will also need to have your organization registered at grants.gov. This is required to submit grants to the federal government of the United States. And then lastly, you will need to be registered at ERA Commons. This is the portal by which you communicate to NIH and we communicate back to you. So it's our shared interface. Lastly, if you're a small business, you also need to be registered at the SBA. So I think, again, I have a hyperlink down below, a lot more information on registration. I bring up this slide because one of the most common kind of errors that we see preventing the submission of the application has to do with attachments. So you want to use simple PDF formatted files for your attachments. Don't rename doc, so doc.pdf, that doesn't work. Disable any security features. It's no value to us if you send us a cover letter that has the security feature because our system will not be able to process your applications. We require that the file names are no longer than 50 characters. This will prevent, again, the prevention of the application from being submitted. File names need to be unique within an application. And if the instructions tell you to use a specific name, use it. That'll be very important for the bookmarking in the table of contents. Please do not include footers or headers. We add them, but we do encourage you for adding section headings such as significance, innovation, and approach. Make sure you follow specific page limits if they are specified. And again, follow guidelines for fonts and margins. These are all things that can cause your applications to be withdrawn. Lastly, if you are going to be completing the human subjects clinical trial information form, a few guides about the text fields. These are very large text fields on this form. And we do not support cutting and pasting. So again, you want to format your paragraphs with blanks using hyphens or asterisks to create bulleted lists, and then taking advantage of our preview functionality to make sure that the text is appearing as you would like it. And again, character counts do take into consideration spacing and punctuation. Lastly, it's really important now to start identifying your team members, making sure that your registrations are in place, determining who's going to be responsible for the budgets, gathering data, creating attachments, doing data entry. Make sure you know and everyone else on your team is aware of internal deadlines, who needs to do what in terms of reviewing and submitting the application, who's going to be responsible for dealing with errors and warnings. So just before now, last slide before the demo, again, really important to emphasize for multi-project applications, they will always have one overall component which sort of summarizes or captures the gestalt of the whole project. And then individual components such as cores and projects, the names and the numbers of these will be specified in section 4.7 of the funding opportunity announcements. And again, if you understand this simple premise of having an overall followed by components, I'm going to go into that a little bit in the demo. You're going to sail through this process. So I've logged in here into the ERA Commons account. So this is again that registration that you're going to need. I'm going to log in as a SO, which is a signing official. That gives me access to a few other things than a PI. for any submission, minimally you need to have 2 roles or 2 individuals with the role. One as a signing official, which is an administrative role, and someone with the role of a PDPI or a scientific role. So those are the two roles that are needed minimally to submit an application. So now I'm in, you can see I'm now in Sharon Verond. This is again one of our lower environments. Here's my information. To get to Assist, which is our submission system, I'm gonna click on Assist. You can log into Assist directly by just Googling Assist, NIH. So again, for the sake of time, I've created an application for us to go through. If you are going to be starting new, this is where you would enter your funding opportunity announcement, and would give you a little reminder of what that format needs to be. You'd enter that and hit go. Again, one thing is we realize that this is a process in terms of submitting an application. And so we give you a number of ways of going back on working on an application that you previously started. So this is one that I worked on earlier. Okay, so just to orient you, this is the landing page. And so on the left-hand side are what we call navigational bars, and I'm going to go through a couple of these in a minute. What you will see here depends in part where you are in the application. So again, we are now at the application level. So here for complex application, you will, when you log in initially, it will be defaulted to the overall. And this is an opportunity then to build the scaffold of your application. You click on Add Component, you click Component Type. So these again, as I mentioned, will be specified in section 4.7 of the funding opportunity announcement. And so again, it will tell you how many cores, how many kinds of projects or research components you can have. So I'll cancel. Okay, so what I've done here is I have one overall, I've created 2 cores, and I have 1 research project. So the other things that are here is manage access. Manage access allows you to grant access to your application to individuals individuals at your organization or at other organizations. Within that by granting a person access, you can also control what they can and cannot view. So they can either view the entire application. So for example, myself, I have no limits in terms of what I can see or edit in terms of the application. I also have the ability under Status Maintainer to update the status of any component in the application. And again, you can go in at any point and modify what section of the application an individual can see or not see. So for example, if I only want this individual to be able to view but not edit the budget, I can make that change here. So that's Access Maintainer. So that's how you build your team. So again, we give you breadcrumbs to get back to various parts of the process. We give you little tips on what functionality you may want to what you may be wanting to do to go next. And then again, we give you a way to get back to the application. So we've talked about granting access, building your team. We've talked a little bit about adding components, which is building the scaffolding of the application. So these are the things you want to do first. You want to create the scaffold of the application by creating the number of components needed or specified in the funding opportunity announcement. You want to build your team by granting access to individuals at your institution or at other institutions. And what I forgot to mention is that to have an individual have access to the application, they will need an ERA Commons account. The other thing that you can do is display the status of a component, change the order. You can only change the order within a component type. So for example, if you want to change the order of the cores, you can do that, but you cannot move a project, which is a P, before the core, which is the C. So there's a little bit of rearrangement you can do, but you cannot move things outside of their set order, which is overall core projects. Preview application allows you to view the application as the reviewers will see it without a few of the headers and footers. So for the sake of time, I've already created a application image, and I don't think without not sharing, it's going to let me see that. So I'm guessing, let me come back to that at the end. Validate the application. This will run your application through all of the business rules. And so errors will prevent an application from being submitted. Warnings you can choose to ignore. You want to go through them to make sure that there are not ones that are clearly specified in the funding opportunity, but do not merit an error in terms of business rules. So this is all good. So I have no errors that I have to correct. So one of the things that we also have available is, so I've talked a little bit about how the application guide gives you basic instructions, how the funding opportunity announcement, particularly section 4, gives you the very detailed information that you must include in the application. And then should Fogarty need to amend any of those instructions, the guide notice would supersede that. We have annotated form set which walk through each individual form and tell you what information is required at that form level. This is again how to get to the application. So what I forgot to admit, so again, this is now a screenshot of the line demo. Each of these tabs represents one of the forms. So I am now clicked the research plan form, and then so you can see that this particular form requires a number of attachments. And so that's how when you click on the overall, there'll be forms for that. When you click on administrative core or other core, all of those forms will be available to you. You don't have to do anything additionally. We do have a couple of places where in this particular case, you can see this is the overall, there's no budget form, but we do have a couple of other optional forms, such as for a cover letter, for a assignment request form, and in some cases for a budget form. You can find that on optional form. Clicking on that will take you to a menu. Clicking on the form will result in the new form appearing as part of the tab. Okay, so one of the things that I had wanted to show in the demo for the complex application is that you need to go through and update each component to final. And once you have done that, then the administrator, the SO, can go ahead and update the status of the application to work in, ready to submit. So the only individuals who have the role of AOR, which is Authorized Organizational Representative, that is a credential at grants.gov, has the right and permission to submit a grant application. So the PDPI cannot do that. So again, it has to be an individual that has the role of AOR. So once you do that, the application will be routed through grants.gov. That's why you need to be registered at grants.gov. And the grant will receive a grants tracking number, seen here, grant with this particular number, and a timestamp. This is the timestamp that NIH uses to determine an on-time submission. So the policy for an on-time submission is that the application must be error-free by 5 o'clock local time. So if you are in Ethiopia, it's 5 p.m. Ethiopia time. If you're in Washington, D.C., it's 5 p.m. Washington, D.C. time. So again, submitting early means days, not minutes, so that you have time to correct or address any unseen issues, as well as to correct any potential errors that are generated during the validation and submission process. So that, yeah, so a little bit of humor. If you want to submit at 4:50 a couple days ahead of time, that's always good. So deadline, again, I really just want to emphasize the importance of this, is that means, again, all your registrations must be complete. The SAM renewal must take place, must be in place. You must have all errors corrected. We do not allow you to correct the errors after the deadline. And again, we highly recommend submitting early. Here's a quiz for you. Approximate measure of early: minutes, hours, or days? Right, days. So again, most organizations have policies in place requiring applications to be submitted to the business office, in some cases a couple of weeks, in some cases a couple of days, so that they can do what they need to do to get the application submitted. So measure early on a calendar, not a clock, is one of the mantras that we have at NIH. So tracking your application is critical. Once you get your grants.gov number, the next thing you want to see is a accession number. And again, you can keep hitting the status button in Assist until you can see that the application has gotten that status, and gives you a link to ERA Commons where you can view the assembled grant image. Your AOR or anyone with the role of assistant can also look at your application. And you want as many people as possible to take a look at the application in those 2 days that you've submitted early, which we call the viewing window. And it is your responsibility to check your application to make sure we have assembled it as you think we should have assembled it. Again, errors stop the processing and have to be corrected. Warnings do not stop it, but we again recommend correcting them at your discretion. So if you do find errors and you need, or warnings and things that you sort of need to then go in to correct, that you need to address, you need to then submit a change corrected application, and that's a box at the top, and include the grants.gov tracking number in field 4C on the cover page. And again, this must be done before the deadlines. And you know, you can do this as many times as you want because reviewers do not see how many times your application was submitted. So once an application that's error-free has been submitted to us, we assemble it into a grant image. We insert headers, which is the PI's name in the complex application. We also identify overall cores and projects. We generate a table of content with bookmarks. If you've had attachments that you've been requested to use a particular name, they can readily be identified in the table of content. And we post this application on in the PI's Commons account in status. And we also send you some notifications. So again, you have 2-day windows, 2 days to business days to view the application before it automatically moves forward in the process. During this window, if you find something that looks wrong and you want to put in a change corrected, the signing official can go into Commons and reject the application, which will allow you to then go ahead and put in a change corrected. If you don't reject it, it's going to move forward to forward in the review process. Anything that any subsequent application changes in terms of being done after the 2-day window are subject to NIH's late policy. So again, we apply all kinds of validations. We put them, grants.gov has validations, we have validations, and we have eyeballs that look at applications. And so here's basically a summary. So grants.gov, make sure that you have a active SAM registration, that the individual with the AOR is consistent with the DUNS, and that you're submitting to an active funding opportunity, that there's no viruses, and that the file names are in appropriate form and are limited to 50 characters. We do a lot more validations on specific business rules, and again, I talked a little bit about attachments. We also make sure that there are bio sketches for all the senior key, and that the performance site for the submitting organization is consistent across the DUNS. And then eyeballs in terms of agency staff will make sure that the application fits within the scientific mission of the Institute, that the individuals submitting are eligible, that you haven't put things in sections of the application that are not page limited, that don't belong there. They'll make sure the application is on time. And then again, they do check for fonts and margins. This is an issue of fairness, that we do have page limits for a particular reason, and font and margin playing around can give people sometimes a little bit more space. And we make sure that you don't have duplicate applications under review at the same time. So lastly, before opening it up to questions, I've included a lot of resources. Our service desk is fabulous, and it's answered by people, and these are our local subject matter experts. So they're really, really good sources. A few other emails there, and then again, some of the things I've mentioned here. Again, here are the links for those. I will make these available. There's some listservs. And again, I have also prepared some slides that are specific for putting together a complex application. So with that, I'm gonna stop sharing and open it up to some questions.
Thank you very much, Laurie, for the explanation and presentation. So there are a few questions in the chat room that I will quickly read to you. We have about 5 minutes before we close the session, so that you can quickly respond to them. The first question is from Alan Mukwana. He asked if can we have more than 2 administrators for an institution? That's the first question.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we absolutely encourage that because people go on vacation, they have parental leave. So absolutely. So one of the first things in creating certainly grants.gov and ERA Commons account, the SO, assigning official, or AOR, wants to delegate that same responsibility to others in the organization. So that's a great question. So, again, we really encourage more than one administrator.
Thank you very much. And the second question is from Rakaya Nadia. She asked, what's the way to change AOR in an institution?
So again, an AOR is a grants.gov registration, and there is a individual who is called the point of contact, or e-business point of contact, for the organization, and it is that person who can work through grants with grants.gov to name more individuals as AOR for the institution.
Thank you, Laurie. And we have a question from Lydia Manotti. She asked, is it acceptable if an organization can submit more than one application as a lead or prime applicant?
As long as the science is different, yes, they can. So there's a little caveat for that. So some of our funding opportunity announcements have very clear language that say that they only will accept one application per organization. If that language is not there, then you may submit more than one as long as the science is different.
Okay, and another question from Henry is, when you register into a platform, you need to have an idea of what will be required to input in each section of the application.
So great question, Henry. So so first, there's a guidance in the instructions as well as the funding opportunity, what needs to be in each section. So there are very clear instructions about what needs to be there. So in terms of a core or a project. The second, in terms of a sample form, I provided a link, which is the annotated form set. So while the instructions and the funding opportunity announcement give you sort of a broad instruction, the very detailed kind of information that is required there, you can also see how that's displayed following the link I gave on the annotated form set. So if you Google NIH annotated form set, you want competition F, you can again go through that. And we have those for a couple of our different programs. So that's where you can actually see what the forms look like and what we expect in terms of the information to be there. But otherwise, the science and things like budget information will be given in the instruction guide or in the funding opportunity announcement.
Thank you very much, Laurie. Probably a last question from Amy. Who makes the grants GOV registration? Is it so? Shall the same credentials from ERA Commons be used when registering with the grants GOV?
So great question. So the hierarchy is the first thing that you need to get is a DUNS. Once you get a DUNS, you can then get a SAM registration. Now you have the two things that you need to get a grants.gov registration. The person that is responsible for that registration is called the eBiz point of contact. So they establish the registration of your organization with grants.gov. For ERA Commons, the person, it can be the same as the AOR. We call them signing officials because they have authorities to submit applications to NIH for an organization. We require only a DUNS number. So the thing that we share in common with grants.gov is a DUNS number. So that's so you can start those, once you have a DUNS number, you can start the processes in parallel.
Thank you very, very much, Laurie, for this step-by-step presentation of the application process. I really appreciate it, and I hope colleagues enjoyed it. As I mentioned earlier, the recording of the session will be made available for everyone to access it and to go back and look at it. So I thank you very much for the participants of the session as well. We're going to close the session in a few minutes, so I will invite you now to return to the plenary session, where the funding leads will be able to answer a few more questions and share their closing remarks. You will need to leave this Zoom room to get there and navigate back to the interactive panel page and enter the Zoom button there. So click the red button in the right-hand corner to leave, and then find the plenary and join the green button there. Thank you very much, everyone, once again. Please end the session and join the plenary session for more questions and comments. Thank you very much from my end. Thank you, Laurie.
Thank you. Thanks for all your help. Good luck with the rest of the conference, everyone.